Hello and welcome back to another tutorial. In this video I'll be showing you how to cut a one shoulder dress, and these are all the items I'll be needing for this particular dress. Okay, so this is my fabric, scissors, tape and chalk. To begin, my fabric is folded into four and I'm starting with the lower part or the skirt part of the dress. You can see that the back or the lower folds are wider because that would serve as my zip allowance, while this will serve as my center front or the front piece, while the back piece has a zip allowance fold as well. So what I'm going to do is really easy, so let me just show you guys what I'm going to do. Now my fabric is folded into four like I said, so what I'm going to do first is to draw a border line at the top, which would serve as the waistline or the line that I would take all the measurement from. If you've been following me for a long time, you know that this is usually the first thing I do when I want to cut on fabric or on paper or whatever. Now that I have that line marked, I am going to get my hip line, and to get my hip line I'm just going to subtract my half length from this measurement. So from my shoulder to half length is 18, so I have 18 placed on that initial line that I drew. Then I'm going to mark 25 inches, which is my shoulder to hip, then the full length, which is 45 inches, and I'm adding 2 inches to that to make it 47, because this dress is quite long and I'm quite tall as well, so I think 47 would just be a little bit below the knee or on the calf, and it works well for me. So I'm using 47 for 45 rather for the full length. So that is my waist, my hip and the length, as well as the hem allowance. And we have the zip allowance on the other side. You can see that side has a double fold, so that is the center front. So if you want to take your waist measurement, I'm taking from the inner fold, not the, just see what I'm doing. So you can see that that is where I'm taking my waist measurement from, not from the side that has the zipper allowance extension. So I'm just going to divide my waist circumference by 4 and ensure that I had seam allowance as well as ease to it. So just divide your waist measurement by 4, have it marked out. Do the same thing for your hip. Divide your hip measurements by 4, add not zip allowance, add sewing allowance and ease. Then you just connect the point from your waist to the point to your hip with a curved line. If you have a hip curve, that would work, but I don't have a hip curve, so I do this with my free hand. All right, then I'm moving over to the hem, and to get the hem I just measure my waist, then add 1 inch to it, and that is what I use to for my hem. So a lot of times when I make skirts or dresses, I just measure my waist and add 1 inch to it. Then I would connect from the hip to that marked point at the hem, and that would serve as the circumference for the hem. And this is basically the curve for the hip area of the skirt or the dress, as we would see much later. Alright, so the next thing would be to cut this part out, because this is pretty much it. So when you're cutting out, you want to ensure that you do not cut off your zipper allowance. So you want to be extra careful, because you may forget and just cut it off. So I'm just ensuring that I don't cut off the zipper allowance and the zipper allowance doesn't come out too big, and that is what you see me doing at the moment. Just cut the waist area, the hip area, all the way down towards the hem. Then I would go ahead and notch the zipper fold. Where the zipper fold will start, just notch it, just so you don't take less or use more fabric than intended. And as well, I'm going to notch the hem as well, not the hem extension but where the actual hem is, just so I have that as a guide. Okay, now we're going to move over to making the upper part of this dress, which is the most important part. I know a lot of people are looking forward to. So I'm just going to fold my fabric into two like this, and I did not state I'm using 3 yards for this dress. Okay, so it's 3 yards I'm using. All right, so I'm trying to be economical with the fabric. All right, so I'm just folding the fabric into 2. Then again I would draw a border line as usual. So I think when I bought this fabric, the person that cut it out did not cut it well. They cut it on a slant, and why you see it looking like this. But anyways, let's go. So from that line I marked out earlier, I'm going to measure 19 inches downwards. and just measure it downwards. And I'm going to check the extra or the remaining part if it's going to be enough for my half length, which it is. Then I'm just going to cut this out. Okay, so I would advise that before you cut out, you check the width as well to know if it's enough for your size, depending on how big or how small your bust area is. Just check. But I could tell that it was going to fit me, or it was going to be enough to cut my size, because I'm quite petite, so that works. So you can see I'm just going to separate this. Then I would place the one we cut off over the other folded edge or the folded fabric like this. So because we need like the front and the back cut out together, I want to cut out the front and the back together. That is why I am doing it like this. So I'm just going to place that fabric over the other fold at the lower part like this. So you can see that they are not placed equally. The one below is wider because of the zip allowance as well, similar to what we did for the lower part of the outfit. So you want to put that into consideration. Having arranged the fabric correctly and appropriately, I'm just going to go ahead and measure my shoulder width, which is 8 inches. Half of my shoulder width, actually 8 inches. Then my neck width is 3.5. I'm using 3.5 for the neck width, and the neck depth I'm using 1.5. So note that the measurements I'm taking from the upper one, from the midpoint of the upper fabric, not from the midpoint of the lower fabric. All right, so once we have marked out the neckline, what I'm going to do next is to reduce the shoulder slant, or to impute a shoulder slant. And to do this, I'm just going to drop the shoulder by 1 inch and connect it to the neckline, just so we have a slanty shoulder like this. And from that slanted shoulder, now I'm going to take my body points, which are basically the bust, the under bust, and the length as well. So my shoulder to bust is 10.5 inches. So from that shoulder line, I'm going to mark 10.5 inches. And my under bust is 14 inches from shoulder. And the length, like I said, is 18. But I'm going to add half an inch for seam allowance. So I have 10.5 on the bust area, 14 on the under bust area, and 18.5 for the half length area. And I'm just going to draw that out all the way to the end of the fabric. Having done that, the next thing to do would be to create the armhole line. So from that shoulder line, I'm going to come down by 8 inches and connect it back to the end of the shoulder, which is basically going to serve as my armhole line much later. Do know that I'm still going to curve that out, but let's go ahead and fix the data for now. So from the fold of the upper fabric, which is the front part, I'm going to mark 4.5 inches on the half length, on the under bust, as well as the bust point. So I'm just marking 4.5 inches here, and on the other bust as well, I'm going to mark 4.5 inches. Now do note the 4.5 inches I'm taking from the fold of the upper fabric, which is going to be the front, and not from the fold of the lower fabric, which is going to be the center back. No. So if you want a detailed video on how to do this, I have a video on how to draft bustiers, princess dart, or bustiers, whatever kind of dart you're looking for. Okay, then having done that, I came down from the bust line by 1 inch, and this is to ensure that it's not pointy. Okay, then on the under bust line, I went towards the sides by 1.5 inches, and this is to contour the front dart, the dart for the front area. And I'm going to repeat the same thing on the half length as well. Now do note that this contour is going to be just on the front part of the fabric. It's not going to be on the back. I'm just going to connect those 1.5 inch lines together, and I'm going to connect it back into the point where the 4.5 inch mark meets the bust line. So what I'm going to do next now is to create the armhole. So I'm just going to go ahead and create the armhole, just so we can further create a princess dart, because we need a princess dart for this. And like I said, if you didn't know how to draft a detailed or an actual princess dart, or a bustier, or any type of dart, I have different videos on the channel on how to draft that. I have for a bustier, I have for a princess dart as well. So I'm going to have them linked at the top right part of the screen, just so it's easier, or just so you can watch them right after this one, in case you're finding it difficult to do that. So what I'm doing actually is just creating the dart, or the princess dart, and let me just keep quiet for a while and focus on doing that. So because this is a princess dart, you need to contour the armhole as well, just so it doesn't puff or have excess fabric around the armhole area. So this is what the dart is looking like. So what I'm going to do is to take my body measurement. So when taking your body measurements, you want to ensure that you replace the measurement you have for your dart. So now I'm going to take a quarter of my bust area, then I would add 1.5 to that and still add sewing allowance to it as well. So sewing allowance can be 1.5 to 2 inches depending on what you would like. So I'm using 2 inches for that. Then I'm just going to do the same thing for the waist area. Take a quarter of that measurement, adding 1.5 as well as sewing allowance to it as well. Now when you've marked everything out, this is what it looks like. And see that this is the breast contour, and this would be just for the front. Okay, it's not going to reflect on the back. All right, so when cutting on the back, I'm not going to be curving out that contour. I'm just going to cut out with this initial dot line. All right, so just see what I'm doing, and I'm pretty sure it's really easy. It's just a step-by-step process. Okay, so I'm just going to cut out the excess fabric from the length as well as from the side. Then I'm going to extend the armhole. I forgot to extend the armhole because this is a princess dart. You don't want it to be too short, so just extend your armhole by 1.5 inches as well. So you can see that I'm cutting the initial dart line on all the fabric pieces. Then when I am done with that, I would remove the front pieces, the front side pieces, both of them, and then I would contour it using that measurement we took, just so it gives it this curved look. And this is what it should look like, and you can see the back is straight while the front has that curve. I'm just going to go ahead and cut off the shoulder, cut off the neckline, and then I would slit the center back open because we need it open just so we can install the zip to it. And this is what the back looks like. Actually, you can see we have two center backs and two side backs. You can see that the dart for the back is just one straight curve, while the dart for the front has the contour to give it that room to accommodate your breast area. And this is what the front looks like. The next step now I know is to create the one shoulder. Now that we have the front, the next thing would be to create the slant. And to do this, I'm just going to flip my fabric over to the wrong side. You can see that the right side is facing me because we're going to be marking on chalk, or with chalk you don't want the right side facing you. So I'm going to flip the wrong side over just so I can face the wrong side can face me, and I'm going to put the matching side piece. So you want to be careful when doing this and ensure that your side piece is also placed wrong side up. Then from the shoulder, I'm going to just figure out where you want your slant to be, or your want shoulder to be, if it's on the right or the left. I really don't have a preference, but from one of the shoulders I'm going to come down by 7 inches, which is here. So you want to mark that on the center and on the side as well, just so you have a guide. Then from that 7-inch mark, I'm going to connect dotted lines from one of the shoulders to that 7-inch point. So you can do this with freehand, or you can use your ruler if you do, or however you prefer. But I'm using my freehand. I'm just creating dotted lines from that shoulder neckline to that 7-inch point that I marked out on this center front piece, and then I'm just going to cut it off like you can see me doing right now. So I'm just going to cut it off. So when cutting off, I'm not cutting from the side, I'm just cutting from the center front piece. Okay, now to do for this side, I basically would just measure, you had that 7-inch point marked out on this center front as well as on this side. So from that 7-inch on this side, I'm just going to go up by 1.5 because this is a dart and you don't want it to be too short. So cutting it the exact way you cut out the center front would result to your fabric coming out short. So I'm going to extend it by 1.5. You can do anything from 1.5 to 1 inches, but I'm using 1.5 just to be on the safe side. I mean, if it's excess, you can easily trim it off. It's easier to trim off excess than to have it looking short. Then I'm just going to connect that 1.5 slant to the armhole and cut off the excess on the top. And you can see that this is what we have for this side. And when you place all your front pieces together, it should look something like this. So this is the side that has the slant, and you can see, so when I place the other part of the dart or the other part of the front piece together, it's just going to come together. You can see that this is what it looks like here, and this is what it looks like on this other side. And it's pretty easy. All right, so now we've done the front. Doing the back can be quite tricky, because if you don't do the back very well, you end up having the slant on the wrong side. So for the front, you can have the slant on the left, and from the back you have the slant on the right, which is chaotic. So you want to take your time to see what I am doing, just to ensure that you don't end up wasting your fabric or your materials. And to cut out the shoulder of the back, we're going to be using the front one as a guide. And to do this, I have the back facing me right side, so both back pieces, center back pieces, are facing me right side. Okay, so I'm just going to place the front one over the back one, right sides facing. So when the, you can just see what I'm doing, so it's easier to explain. So I'm placing both the front and the back right sides facing, so the right sides are overlapping each other. So you want to do this and do it carefully. All right, but before you cut, you want to ensure that you fold in your zipper allowance, just so your zipper allowance doesn't come out too short towards the tip. All right, so just fold in your zipper allowance like this, and ensure that both back pieces are touching each other, not overlapping each other but touching each other. Then put your front piece over it like this. Arrange it properly to ensure that it's not tilted or bent or slant, or it's just placed properly. All right, so once you have done that, you can see that you can see the right parts to cut. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut out uh the back using the front as a guide as well. So this is basically me cutting out the shoulder of the back. I really do hope I'm explaining this thing really well. For I mean, you can actually view the video and see what I am talking about. All right, so once that is done, I'm just going to remove the front part, and then I'll put the side back pieces side by side. So you want to ensure that when putting your side back pieces as well, because your center back are facing you, or is facing you right sides up, you can see that you place your side pieces as well right sides up. All right, so you want to ensure that any piece that is facing you right sides, the corresponding side is facing you right sides up as well. And similar to what I did for the front, I'm going to go up by 1.5 inches and then connect it to the armhole and cut it out. Okay, because I don't want it to be too short, I'm not cutting it the same way I cut off the center back. So if there's any excess after joining the dart, it will be easier to trim it off. So this is what my back pieces look like. You can see I'm placing all of them right sides up, just so you don't get it confused, because if you place some right sides up and you place some wrong side up, you're going to end up misplacing the fabric or placing them wrongly. So you want to ensure that everything is done the right way. So this is what the back looks like. I folded the zipper allowance inside, and this is what the front looks like. All right, so for the sleeves, I want the sleeves to be a basic puff sleeves like this, different from the one that Hilda Bassi has on. So I'm just going to fold my leftover fabric into two, which is quite big if you ask me. But I don't mind it at all, since it's going to be a puff sleeve. I mean, the bigger the better. So I just fold it into two, then I cut out a sleeve. Now I'm not using any measurement for this, I'm just cutting out with the leftover fabric. All right, so I'm just going to do like a curve at the top, as well as a slant at the side of the fabric as well, just to make it look like a sleeve, even though I'm going to end up printing a lot of the fabric around the armhole. So I'm just going to create a slant at the side as well, to make it more realistic that it's actually a sleeve, right? So this is basically what my sleeve is. I just need one and I have just one. Okay, it measures 29 on fold, and this is what the sleeve is, like I said. So these are all my pieces laid out here. So what I'm going to do next is to cut out the matching lining pieces and wadding pieces for all the fabric. Okay, so the next tutorial will be the sewing one. I decided to separate it. And you guys, so this chalk literally messed up my nails. It gave me blue residue at the corner of my nails. I think I'll probably buy the white one next. But anyways, let me know your thoughts about this tutorial or this video. Give it a thumbs up if you learned something. Like, share, and subscribe. And I'll be seeing you all in another video.